is not only an incredibly talented, experienced designer. He's actually, he's had this incredibly rich, experienced design of his own life. He's an expert in food. Talk to him about his food blogs later. He is the consummate Italian, that he knows food, wine, technology. He's a lover of all things, and really passionate about user experience. And so we really wanted to start with a baseline of what the user experience is, and we could think of no one better than Marco to introduce you. Thank you.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Excellent. So what is UX? You'd be surprised. Most people, even large companies, have no ideas what it is that we do. Okay, so microphone is the microphone picking up?
Yeah,
Yes
it's
and no?
just a little late, but it's
So
good.
apparently has to go up.
It's got bad UX.
It's, shall I hold it closer to me? Oh, can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be a double-handed thing. So UX is a relatively new discipline. There is a history of it of about 15 years, but I would say for a great majority of that, aside from a few companies like Apple, like the usual suspects that actually put design in front of the product equation, it's something that large companies and startups are getting to in relatively recent terms. I started a consultancy about 4 years ago in product UX for startups and smartphone and tablet applications. And at the time, 4 years ago, it was impossible to work for a large company who actually wanted a UX designer. What everybody wanted was a visual designer, that they also took care of the interactions of how the public interacted with their product, or a front-end developer that put buttons and commands in the right place and made sure the product stayed functional. Those are small components of what it is that we actually do when we're allowed to do what it is that we do best. So UX, here is a planetary view, and I don't really want you to read, it just gives you an idea of what it is, and I will go over the pieces. So UX, a true UX designer is a bit of a generalist. So I come from visual design mostly, but also live experience design. I work creating visual briefs for Lonely Planet for travel books. I've run a large food startups, the largest community cooking nonprofit in California, and then we launched in Australia and in Texas. I've been a visual artist. I've designed museum programs for Japanese woodblock making. I trained in Japan as a woodblock maker for 10 years. So bringing all of those things and the way people engage with any kind of activity is what we think about. And these are the ways we do it. We take into consideration customer experience. What is the perception that our customer has of our product? And attached to that, event design. When and how consumer comes into contact with our product, what kind of experience do they have at the moment of coming into contact with it? User testing is a big thing. We're going to come back to that. But making sure that users can actually get through the use cases that we have for our product. Interaction design, how that interaction is shaped. The actual creation of the physical product when needed to make sure that it complies with the uses that it's going to have. The interface, the actual digital part that the user sees of our product. And of that, a subcomponent is visual design. And then research, understanding our customers, reading all about them, finding out about them, and designing our product in accordance to our research. And also very, very important and often misunderstood in product design, content strategy. What do they find out, when, at what level of the process, and information architecture, how the content within your product flows. So why do I care about UX? Because you are not your users, and we are humans. We tend to self-design. We create products that we want to use, but in most instances, we are not representative of the great majority of people who we desire to use our products. And your users only care about the end product. They don't care about your funding. They don't care about the fact that you didn't have a UX designer. They don't care that you were low on developers. All they care is the experience they have when they have your product in their hands. Can they accomplish the task they paid for or get for free in many instances, which really doesn't really matter. I mean, if they can't accomplish the task, you'll still get negative reviews and bad feedback even though people didn't pay for the product. That does not seems to be affecting. So I get funded. What can a UX designer do for me? So I highlighted just a few steps of how we are different from what people think of us visual designers. There are a few essential things. First, research. We look at your customers. We do interviews, we do field research, we do shadowing. If it's a consumer-facing product, we will go where the consumers are. We understand how they behave when they're engaging with your product. We understand the limitations. We understand what it is that they want to accomplish with your product. And we help you design the product accordingly and the literature that accompanies the product in a manner that is suitable to its intended use. Mental models. We understand what the user wants out of your product. By research, we actually have data to compile that in a useful manner. If you're trying to sell Homer, I don't know if any of you saw the episode where he tried to build the car and he builds that ridiculous car. What the focus groups and the researchers said that he wanted something else, but he actually wanted the car with the bubble glass and the fenders and the spoilers. This is what we do. We help understand your users and limit the construction of features and task flows through your product to its intended target audience. Priority. What to do next. Understanding your users allows you to have a timeline of when certain features should be implemented, what is necessary for a minimum viable product, what could be iterated at a later date, and what needs to happen immediately for the product not to receive 20 one-star reviews on the iTunes Store. I just have my favorite app Equalizer that recently got completely redesigned without user feedback. And it went from having an average of 4.5 stars. If you go, I'm not going to name names, but if you go to their page today, there are 25 one-star reviews because they changed completely the UX. Nobody likes it, and it dropped their review rating in the space of about 2 weeks. There was a beautiful headline that says, "Developer dummies, are you using this?" It's one of my favorite. The other thing is iteration. We help you understand how to get from a minimal viable product to incorporating the features that your users are asking about. When is it time to put those in the product line? When is it time to wait? And we help you prevent fiascos. I mean, if you understand what it is that they want and what it is that you have the possibility to build, you try to bring those together, not over-promising, hopefully under-promising and over-delivering at the point of launch, and ensuring that the few core features of your product are fully functional.
Yes.
Okay, but how do you do it? These are the UX deliverables. These are some of the essential deliverables, hard deliverables you will get from a UX designer. Personas and scenarios, basically an archetype of your users, different profiles of your users, and the scenarios in which they're going to use the product. Research, and I will go more into that. Task flows, you saw at task flows, is basically following the customer journey through your product in all its iterations. The user launches the app. What do they see? What do they find? What happens when they click here? What happens if they make a mistake? What happens if they can't get back to the home page? That is a user journey through the product. User testing, we make sure that everything that you promise is going to work actually does, and that what you build actually corresponds to the way users are thinking of using your product. The mental model of Homer with a donut. Analytics analysis, one of the most underutilized skills in a product design. People build a product and put no software to track it throughout its life. There's no Google Analytics, and I also highly recommend KISS metrics if you have web products. It allows you not only to track face views and page views and sources, but also full actions for individualized users. KISS metrics, look them up. Product iteration, the lifeline of the product, and then part of that as a subcomponent, user interface design, the visual appearance of your product in front of the users, and live interactions. So if there's only 3 things that you have to keep in mind that we do and we can help you with: testing, research, this is the research of who is going to use it, for which purposes, what are your use cases, make sure those work. Analytics crunching, numbers of your product, where are people coming from. We lost connections. Did he go to sleep?
Yeah.
So analytics, understanding the quantitative aspect of the data about your product. Page views, journeys through your product in numerical factors, not qualitatively understanding your users, but hard numbers. And the last thing is testing, putting your product to in front of a series of users to ensure that when they have a chance to go out and perform on its own, without supplemental video, without educational materials, it can actually accomplish that task. Thank you.
We're actually, Erin Rapacki is going to be joining us on stage, and then we'll have some opportunity to ask some questions from all of our panelists in a moment. But does anybody have any questions for Marco while he's up here? Michael, thank you.
Yeah, one of the most difficult things I've found in doing the kind of thing that you do is getting people to talk about what they really want if they actually understood what your product could deliver. So that evoking of requirements in the context of an affordance or a set of affordances that they've never even imagined. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, well, user interviews are one of the hard part of user experience because they're qualitative. So there is no hard data to validate what people are saying. You have to be a very good listener and you have to ask the right questions and not interrupt people when they are telling you a story. There are some good rules of thumbs. I always say, the 5 W's: why, where, when, what, and who. Don't ask direct questions. Ask contextual context about the situation in which the product is going to be used. Don't ever ask yes and no questions. And make sure people are telling you stories out of which you will extrapolate information about the utilization of the product, and it will provide you supplemental information as things you had not thought about because they are telling you a story of how that would happen.
I want to ask one more question before you step down, and then Marco will be back to join us with the rest of the panelists. So formulate your questions. But my big question is this: how do you get people to not lie? We've done a lot of interviews with people, and they talk about what they actually think that you want to hear, and or how they want to be perceived, and it's not how they truly behave. And
people lie, and I hope we're all adults and we all figure that out by now. The reality is, you sample enough people, and it doesn't have to be a big number. I mean, usually to get a persona, I will interview about 6 people of the same kind of persona that I am looking for to extrapolate information. And then you average, you listen. Again, never specific questions. Specific questions are a sure way to get a lie. And not because people want to lie, but because people want to please. If you've already built something, you invested time and money, they're going to say they like it. They're not going to try to make you feel like, oh, you just wasted 6 months of your life. Also, they don't design products. They may think, oh, would you use this? Yeah, I'd use it. Then they put it on their phone and they forget about it. But you do listen and you learn to extrapolate the useful information, and then you do an average of the stories you hear, and then you make experience judgment calls. I mean, you're never going to have the full story. That's why it's qualitative data, not quantitative from analytics.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you, Marco. of our panelists. So as I said, please formulate your questions. We've got this great UX panel. And our next speaker is actually, phenomenal woman, phenomenal young woman that I met recently because of the work that I was doing with a group called Robot 11. And we've been starting to look at, robotics as it's interacting with the entertainment space. And I came across Erin because this is a woman that has dedicated her life to promoting human-robot interface. And who wouldn't want to have a drink with her? I mean, she's fascinating, and she's done incredible work on both coasts. Really, as she has told me, there are 2 robot centers in the U.S., Boston and San Francisco, and she's been in both. And so let me just actually turn it on over to Erin, and she'll tell you a little bit about her background and some human-robot UX. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erin. So I have a very boring title slide, and I spent an hour last night digging around online because I wanted to find the picture in Star Wars of C-3PO using that little intercom thing that he was holding. Luke Skywalker is trying to talk to C-3PO through an intercom or walkie-talkie, and I just want to say that makes no sense at all for robotics. That is absolutely the most arcane, worst way to think about it. And one of the things I do when I give talks is there's so much talent and inspiration and energy among grad students and PhDs and young entrepreneurs and people who are thinking robots are cool, I want to go start a company. And one of the things I like to say, yeah, robots are cool, but everything you know about robots is wrong because you've been watching sci-fi movies and cartoons and Star Wars. So I like to help people think about robots in the context that they are machines that can connect to anything at any time, and they're smart. And you have to erase your brain about everything you've ever thought you known about robotics from the sci-fi point of view and think about the problem in order to create real, meaningful applications. So a little about me. I like to start a little bit with background because, as some people said, I've worked everywhere. My journey started in 2002. I was in high school, a senior. I did the first robotics thing, got way obsessed with it, very into it. And through college, I studied industrial engineering as an undergrad. I got my master's in mechanical engineering. And as an undergrad, I did a number of internships. One of them was at Dean Kamen's company, DECA. I was testing the iBot wheelchair, the one that balances and climbs stairs. I was doing that in 2004. Then I got my internship at iRobot, working on the Roomba in 2006. I was so excited about that one. I was entering my senior year of college. This is my chance to get into robotics. As a senior, right before that, I convinced iRobot to give me some money to build a casualty extraction payload, rescuing soldiers, hopefully, a payload that sits on their iRobot Warrior platform. This is 2007. Then 2009, I was in grad school, went to UMass Lowell, where I worked in a human-robot interaction lab. It was a very interesting experience. I was getting my mechanical engineering master's, living in the computer science department, working with the CS team doing HRI. They wanted me to build robots for them. One thing I learned about this, mechanical engineers and CS think very differently. And it's very important when you're guiding robotics programs that there's a dichotomy between timelines and priorities and quality between these two groups. So having to merge between, having to build robots for CS students in grad school made me, learn how to work with software people. But the project there was a wheelchair-mounted robotic arm that opens doors. As a mechanical engineer, I don't do this much anymore, but under actuated compliant mechanisms, fewer motors, large amounts of range and error, so you don't have to rely as heavily on your sensor load for precise movements. That doorknob gripper there could be an inch off the doorknob. You didn't need precise sensors or cameras. You can have wiggle room, and therefore you make the whole system a lot less expensive the more compliant it is. 2010, after grad school I realized I wanted to move to the Bay Area. So I looked hard for a Bay Area job. I did it at AnyBots. You might have heard of us back in 2010. We hired a great PR firm and got a lot of press. Telepresence robots. I learned a lot that year. What's interesting about AnyBots was they were in the same building as Y Combinator. So we had a number of VCs going through the building. Ashton Kutcher was in my office, and it was interesting exposure to the the world of Silicon Valley, my first year here, I got to go on the set of How I Met Your Mother with if you see the How I Met Your Mother episode, Robots versus Wrestlers, the large humanoid robot in there battling the wrestler, I was there on the set helping to puppeteer that thing. And that was a really fun year, but that only lasted a year. And then moved on to my first real job, Adept Technology. Now this was an interesting convergence because Adept had just bought a company called Mobile Robots in 2010 that was building research platforms that had self-navigating indoor autonomous software on them. And they've been doing that since 1995. And for the 5 years prior to Adept purchasing them, they've been in entire factories and hospitals tuning their algorithms for indoor live dynamic path planning, basically moving inside any way a robot is expected to move. And I saw this, and one side of my brain is like, well, that's just a research platform. Where's the commercial application? Then I learned about the world of automated guided vehicles, and all of a sudden I realized these two worlds are colliding. There's things industrial automation companies have been doing for decades that the Robots 2.0, or new wave of robotics and researchers, are coming up with just purely re-architected new ways of doing it that allows for a lot more flexibility, a lot lower cost. Most of this year, 2013, I actually moved on to a startup. I kind of got the startup bug. You don't make a lot of money when you work for a public company. That's one of the things eating at me when I was at Adept. But I worked at a company called Industrial Perception for the majority of this year. Has anyone here heard of Willow Garage? So IPI is the perception team from Willow Garage who spun off with 3D perception technology as applied on large industrial robot arms. And in this case, we were moving boxes around for warehouses and logistics. But until IPI, robots only saw the world in 2D, or any robot doing real-time vision movement. Things would come down a conveyor, maybe they were erratically placed, and a robot could see a cookie or a chocolate in real time and pick it, but they couldn't ever move the gripper into a different plane to pick. And here with the boxes, because you see them in 3D, you can actually orient the robot to actually pick at the grass surface. And being a startup, things were amazing, we got some business, things were great, but, and for very good reasons, they decided to pivot and put their heads back into research. I want to sell things. So 3 weeks ago, I started at Suitable Technologies, and they're building the Beam telepresence robots. I've been making a few calls the past month saying, funny how things come around. It's at AnyBots 4 years ago, the very cusp of this telepresence or remote presence world. But Suitable is also a Willow Garage startup. And they built the tech side back 4 or 5 years ago. And also brought it on Big Bang Theory, and it was a Shellbot. So it's funny, whenever they take the beam to another part of the country, people are like, oh, that looks like Shellbot from Big Bang Theory. Is it like, yeah, well, we built it. We built that one too, which is the predecessor to this one. And I'm just so excited to be here because this remote presence device world is ready to take off. They really designed the internals and the AV, the microphone array, the wireless access point switching, everything is designed for the application, which in my view, no other remote presence robot's ever done. So I know that's a long-winded intro for me, but hopefully I've kind of seen a lot. So my goal is to make robots happen. That's been my goal since high school. And ever since high school, I just desperately tried to get the word robot on my resume incrementally. And over the past, I'm gonna give myself 2 months to get the word robot on my resume. That was honestly my strategy throughout, up until 2011 when I finally joined the club, because I wasn't MIT or Stanford. My goal will make robots happen. So hypothetical situation. Anyone here worked in South Bay and then moved to San Francisco? I'm one of them. All right. Let's say you worked in South Bay and you need a nice car in South Bay. You need your BMW. All right. And let's just say hypothetically, I'm trying to give everyone a good reason why they might have an extra 20 grand in their pocket. And you move to San Francisco, and just about when you realize you don't need that car anymore, yeah, you get it totaled. Someone hits you. And their insurance company is going to give you $20,000. I say $20,000 because there's a lot of interesting robots available at the $15,000 to $25,000 range. And you're thinking, and it's like, all right, well, let's see. I want to get into robotics. It's going to be a big thing. What can my startup be centered on? There's all these people with platforms and devices, and they have APIs, but they're only doing direct sales. And one of the things I want to educate people about is that You can take any robot platform and do a value add to it and make that your service business, or make that your own company. Much like building an app on an iPhone or Android phone, there are hardware sets out there that you can make money on. However, it's not always clear. Sometimes your favorite robot and the one that evokes an emotion or is cute or something is not the one that you're going to make the most money on. So here are 3 robots you can get for. You have your check for $20,000 from the insurance company. You don't need a car anymore, and you want to start a robot company. What do? So this, I should have wrote down what these robots are called. Yeah. This one's NAO, now. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, there's no feedback, so I feel a lot better. And this robot is cute. I should have thrown some videos in here, but it's cute. It's about this tall, it'll dance, it'll say cute things. There's a lot of videos of Heather Knight and other people doing little comedy routines with them. And you know, your heart might be like, oh, that's the cutest thing ever. And it's a little humanoid, and I don't understand what you do with it. This is the Baxter from Rethink Robotics. Again, between the $15,000 to $25,000 range, it has an API. You can figure out how you might want to use it to move things around in a warehouse, but it's kind of limited. So their passive and compliant joints makes it very difficult for them to move heavy things or things quickly. And the value proposition often in robotics is how quickly you can move something, because the faster you move something, the more throughput you get, and that usually quickly equates to value. And I will admit this robot was kind of my baby at a depth. Here you have a little platform that can move around space. Right now they're using it to move blood samples in hospitals. So one way to make labs more efficient, if anyone knows about batch processing or queuing theory, a person doing blood work would usually sit at their desk, load a bunch of blood work on the cart, and send it to the next station. The next station would actually be starved of work until they get this big cart, and that person who should be paying to do blood work is spending 10 minutes pushing a cart. So what if they can move that blood work more frequently? There's a story of a kid who died of sepsis because he was released from a hospital, and the hospital did not necessarily get all the testing done in time, or thought it was such low risk they would release him before the tests were done. And here's a real value proposition. What if those tests were done a lot faster and they realized there was a risk and that kid was never released? That kid would still be alive today. So throughput in hospitals is very important. Being able to move things exactly when you want them in small increments is important, but they don't want to pay somebody just to push a cart or pay very valuable people to waste a quarter of their hour pushing a cart. That's one application. The other one is they're moving semiconductor wafers in fabs over in Singapore. Again, they're bringing in 200 people just to move pods from machine to machine. It's crowded, no one likes to work, they do it. But I'm thinking, what if I can get this thing to deliver my coffee? What if you have a coffee shop on the bottom floor of a high-rise building? You make an arrangement with the coffee shop, and people put their coffee order on their phone, and on their phone they might say, I'm on floor 20, and pre-configured is a place on every floor where the robot will know to stop, and people know that's where they need it. But the order goes down to the bottom coffee shop, they throw it on the robot goes up, waits at 20, or goes straight to your desk. And maybe I can pre-schedule my phone to do it like every day at 3 o'clock. When did the coffee shop sell more coffee? So because the phone and the app is a request device to tell the robot what to do, then I can have more. Wow, I'm going over. So one of the things was, yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna tell you. So here's things in the Jetsons, like a character in the Jetsons will tell Rosie face to face what to get her, and then go back to the room. That makes no sense. Rosie's already in the kitchen. Tell your phone or whatever device you have in you, I want a bagel, and then Rosie can quickly give you a bagel. Or you can type them, I want a bagel. And that just makes more sense because the linguistic part of the sentence, I want a bagel, where is the bagel? Where can I find it? Have I found it before? It's easier to type it and make it some kind of input device, and that way it can easily reference a 3D object database or an image, know what a bagel should look like, and know that bagels are commonly located in the fridge or on the counter. That's what those things look like. The robot should already know it's in the kitchen. So here's a product that very closely relates to how connected devices and robotics. This is a cocktail drink dispenser. Very new, similar to Barbot, if you guys have been to that. And they're commercializing this. And they have an app, you can go to a bar. I watched their pitch recently, have your favorite drinks. Perhaps as you walk into the bar, the Monsieur product behind the bar is already making you the drink, or the one at home knows that you just got home from work and starts making you a drink. Under this application, this is purely one of the best ways to start thinking about how connected devices and robotics and automation start communicating with each other. Maybe there's coupons, maybe there's a promotion to ordering 5 drinks, and you can just, the applications keep going. Next one, not a robot pushing a shopping cart, that doesn't make any sense. But because there's indoor autonomous controllers you can already buy to put that in a shopping cart. And what if there's a screen on a shopping cart? This is an article about Whole Foods trying it out with, you can store your grocery list. Perhaps as it's going down the aisle, it's like, hey, did you notice this product on the shelf is on sale? It can proactively tell you things. And you can always find your shopping cart. Maybe, I don't know, when I was a kid, my dad would send me to go get the bread, even though he was in the dairy section. That way I can actually always know where the cart is, and we can split off and do work together. Again, another connected way to add product and merchandising directly to the point of sale with a more active device, a more active system. So, just one quick little thing. If I tell a robot what to do, what happens when you tell a lot of robots what to do? Which robot's closer? Which robot's further? Which ones has more battery power? There's a lot of things to think about. Ooh, is Peter showing up? Okay. No, I won't slide that. So when you tell multiple robots what to do, there has to be a layer managing all that information. What's funny is the automated guided vehicle world already figured this out. They have warehouse management systems and inventory management systems that lock onto product called pallets. And there's transport requests saying, pull this, pull that at this time, pull that at this time. That's no different than having 100 people in a high-rise building requesting coffee, and the cloud system prioritizing on the robot who gets coffee and when, and how this whole optimization metric comes through. And perhaps the coffee shop will sell more coffee. And one of the reasons why I'm excited at my current company, and here's a little thing, this just came up on TEDx last week, is here, the gentleman here, Chad Jenkins, he had a stroke-like event, he can't speak well anymore, he can't move a whole lot anymore. And he's using these AR drones to go check out his backyard. And he's flying around his backyard and checking out the outside world and checking his garden. His TED Talk is very moving. And he uses the beam here to beam to Rhode Island, to Robotics Lab in Rhode Island, to help them do more research on how robotics and remote presence devices can help people with disabilities go out in the world. And he uses the beam all the time. And there he is on stage because it does give him a great presence. So if you want to follow me, Robot Diva, or follow my company, Suitable Tech, you can learn more about these things. And thank you.
It's ironic. Oh, Erin, stand here with me for a second.
We're pouring another glass of wine.
Yeah, there you go. We're doing a UX event, and we're having technology failures, which happens. So it's funny. Whenever I speak to my speakers about coming to these events, we always have a plan B, right? Plan C is to do shadow puppets on the stage, so we're ready for you at any time. One of the things is, I love the stuff that's happening with robotics. And as we all know, or as we all can imagine, even if you don't know it, that, a lot of the robotics that have been happening have started in the industrial settings that Erin shared with us. And now we're starting to see things like Play Eye, yes, and a number of things that are happening in the connected toy space and the much more human connected space. And I'd like to ask, what do you see as really the next, where's the first Rosie going to be? I mean, we've got Roombas. How many people here have a Roomba or an automated house? I have a Roomba. Oh, just a couple people. Nobody has an automatic vacuum cleaner? They're fabulous. I could be a salesperson for those people. I have hardwood floors and a cat, and they're really wonderful.
I got that for free when I was an intern at Robot, so they're useful, they're great.
So what do you see as the next really human interaction robot that's going to be on a mass scale?
I can't just say one. The problem is, a multi-purpose robot will be very, very expensive. And that's been the issue with robotics. They have excellent technology, and with adept and industrial perception, they had amazing technology that industrial folks are willing to pay for. for. And that's why I allowed UX to sell to those companies for a long time, was because they had a technology where once you create breadth of scale, that technology would become accessible in more consumer-based devices. But there's going to be a limiting factor to robotics where the best technology is going to be stuck in automation for a long time. You're not going to see it in connected devices. But in terms of using your phone or computers as input devices to these machines, and perhaps the machine is shared, like this coffee delivery system. It could just be a cart with a coffee tray on top, and you don't have to disrupt your day if you have a busy day to go, have a really nice cup of coffee made for you. And this device is instead shared. And someone could, honestly, I'm giving out this idea, someone could make a lot of money off of this and not even build the robot. It's a service industry. Like, who builds the app and who makes the deals with all the coffee shops? Who gets into the building? And so we're going to be shared, for the robots that have really large amount of value, they'll be shared and service-based. And because there are so many sensors that do get cheaper, there will be smarter toys and more interesting toys that will work with your phone, like Anki and a bunch of other things.
It is amazing how cheap these processors and chips are getting. And in the toy space, we're seeing things like Bluetooth LE come under $6. RFID chips are under $1 now, and so they're showing up in more and more toys, which is why we started tonight with connected toys. So one other question before I let you go, and then we're gonna bring up Alex to talk about wearables. There's this connection between the robotics, which we're looking at as automating systems, and the wearable devices, where they can potentially sense us, right? Where our computers can sense us. So, we're at this crossroads of where our computers can sense us with things like Fitbit and those types of things. How many people have tried a Fitbit or some type of wearable device? And where's my friend from Santa Cruz that's got the Google glasses on tonight? Where are you, dude? He's here. There you are. Okay. So there's this crossroads now between our devices that sense, our computers that sense us, and things that we want to interact with. So tell me a little bit about how wearables and robotics technology are coming together.
Well, there's a lot of sensor systems, as you said, that can go into wearables. And one of the things that allows wearables, and one of the things that the people building exoskeletons are talking about, is a very elaborate wearable. But what these sensors do is allow for better data mining and algorithmic building off of existing systems for what robots might do in the future. So people wearing exoskeletons, what they're actually doing is also measuring how people walk and doing a big data project on that. And with other biosensors, I don't know, it's, I wish I knew more about the world actually, but I think it's going to be super interesting just what we learn about our bodies and what we learn about what's meaningful to stay healthy.
Cool. Well, on that note, actually, we've got the perfect person to carry on. Alex Gray comes from a family of physical therapists and grew up